Brandon, welcome to 12 Geniuses.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You wrote a new book, Puddle Jumpers. Tell us about it.
Probably the biggest influence on me as a dad was using a lot of the performance psychology that I learned and trained to Navy SEAL snipers and used on my own kids, whether they realize it or not. I think what shocked me was there was not a lot of books for parents by actual parents. And me, I'm the kind of guy, like, if I want to go climb Mount Everest, I'm not going to ask some researcher about the statistics and, how many people don't make it and how hard it is. Like, I want to find someone that's actually climbed the mountain and survived to tell the tale. And then that's kind of my philosophy with Puddle Jumpers. It's my parenting experience, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Was there a moment when you realized, I need to write this book?
I see a lot of incredibly, what I would say, successful career parents, but some of them have got to the point where their kids are teenagers and they did not spend enough time with their kids up until that point. And now their life is chaos because they did not invest enough. They try to outsource everything, the nanny, the coach, the teacher. And you just can't do that as a parent. You have to be involved. And time goes by very fast. And now these parents are tormented because their kids are, drugs, alcohol, bad peer group, real problems. And now their life is this tumultuous situation. And so I was like, okay, I think I can write a book that will help and appeal to this kind of parent, especially because it's not that these parents don't love their kids. They love them to death. I don't think they realize that they've got a parent. You can't just come home, read a bedtime story, and show up maybe an hour on the weekends, while you're on your phone when the kid's at a sporting event. It's just not going to work. I love taking my kids with me places because that's the social proof. I made sure the kids are on the audiobook, like reading in their own words. My ex, Gretchen, wrote amazing foreword for me. She read her foreword on the audiobook, and then we had a whole bonus content section, almost 30 minutes, talking about what it was like to co-parent as to divorced parents, which again, it's kind of it's one of those taboo subjects nobody really talks about.
But you had alluded to your military service and the ways in which it prepared you to parent your 3 children. Can you talk a little bit more about what you learned?
The goal that I got from my military experience and that I've used on myself and to parent was during my time when I came back from my second deployment with SEAL Team 3. I was in Afghanistan when Jackson was born, November 30th, 2001. Came back, was an instructor teaching advanced sniper tactics to experienced Navy SEAL snipers, and then got asked to come down and join the sniper program we have. We're at a time where we were overhauling and modernizing the program, thinking about, okay, how do we update it from a technology point of view, but also how do we be better teachers and better coaches? So we were fortunate enough to bring in all these top performance experts, performance psychologists that work with, professional sports teams, Olympic champions. And we implemented this mental management program into the sniper course. And I saw the results come very fast. We used to fail 30% these are already highly motivated Navy SEALs, and we were failing 30% of them. It was considered one of the hardest courses in the SEAL teams. And when I say mental management, I mean, a real focusing on mental rehearsal, visualization, monitoring self-talk, the little voice that always comes in. We're always battling that little voice in our head, right? Teaching the students how to push it out with personal mantras. As instructors, when you're teaching somebody, whether it's kids or sniper students, something new for the first time, they're sponges. They're just absorbing all this information. And when you're pointing out the mistakes and focusing on the mistakes, you're programming them for bad behavior. And to put that into kid speak, it would be like telling a kid who's going up to bat at a little league game, hey, whatever you do, don't strike out. And now that's all the poor kid is thinking about, right? And adults are the same thing. If I tell a sniper student, hey, stop flinching, which is like they're anticipating the recoil. Now I've given this student a complex. It's always like I planted it in his head. So all these little things, which we call performance psychology, make a huge difference. And when we implemented this, we started graduating everybody. Like 30% went to almost 0%. And I remember thinking, wow, this stuff really works. And also, um, we have humans are great at just walking around like setting self-limiting beliefs for ourselves, right? Like the common way that shows up is I'm not good at numbers, I'm a klutz, these small things. But if you think of yourself this way, like you're kind of living this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I remember when I got promoted and took over as head instructor, I told my instructors, guys, when the students ask for, because they always do, like, hey, what's a good shooting score? Because we have these incredibly hard shooting tests and they have to score 80% minimum, which they can only drop 4 shots. I would just say, look, tell them perfect. Like, that's what we expect, perfection. And when we started saying that, we started getting perfect scores for the first time. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, okay, there you go. That works too. So this was the kind of core fundamentals of what I took away when I left the Navy in 2006 and kind of realized I chose my family over the Navy. I gave the Navy 13 years, 6 months, 6 days. And I didn't want to be a 20-year guy, 30-year guy, because I seen those guys in the SEALs and they all had broken families, no relationship with their kids. Like, there are exceptions, of course, but on a whole, it didn't look very pretty. And so I was like, I had a great time to leave. But that, to answer your question, that portion of my experience and training in the Navy SEALs was crucial for me, I think, helped me personally in my transition, losing my business, my first business, life savings, getting divorced with a young family, all the weight is on my shoulders to provide. And so, yeah, this stuff was all things I used on my kids, like I said, whether or not they knew it or not.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me in the book is that you had started to learn about positive psychology during this period of time. And I don't think people really truly know what positive psychology is. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and what you learned and how you applied that with your children.
One of the guys I learned from, his name is Lanny Basham, and I mention him a lot in Puddle Jumpers because was really influential to me personally as an instructor. And Lanny was a guy that was not good at sports. I think his class voted him as like the least likely to do anything in sports. And then this guy ended up winning a gold medal. So Basham told the story about how he went to this first Olympics. He was a world champion as a rifle shooter and was expected to win gold. This was in, I think, 72 in Munich, in the Munich Olympics. And these Russian guys on the bus got in his head. They started chirping at him. And he's like, oh man, he started thinking about everything they're saying and like the pressure of the situation. Cause he was already, like I said, a world champion, expected to win gold. He's like, I had the worst match of my life. I still won the silver medal, but he's like, that's the worst thing you could do. You're like the first loser. And he was destroyed. He came back and this was in the 70s, and he went to psychologists to see like what happened to me. I've never had a mental breakdown like this. And he said at the time, the prevailing kind of philosophy and these psychologists were like, oh, it's okay to be second best. Like, we're just going to make you okay with being a silver medalist. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. There was like no such thing as positive psychology, which I think, if you looked up the definition, it's essentially, creating a positive narrative internally and having, always choosing, a positive outlook as opposed to a negative one. I like to reference that movie, the second Aliens, right? Where the guy was like the one complainer in the squad, right? He's like, game over, man, game over. Like, sucks. Like, we're going to get our ass kicked. Like, we all have experienced those kind of people, and they're not constructive to like forward progress. So So Lanny was like, no, I don't want to do this. So he went on his own because he was on the US Olympic team. He interviewed as many gold medalists as he could, and he built this system of mental performance for himself, which are all the elements of what would be considered in the modern day, version of like a positive psychology or performance psychology routine. And he found that interviewing all these gold medalists, they all had certain traits. They all really worked on their self-talk. They all did mental rehearsal. We see mental rehearsal now. If anyone has watched the Drive to Survive with the F1 drivers, they're kind of closing their eyes, practicing on the track. I recently watched Winter Olympics. I think every athlete I saw, especially on the snow sports, were rehearsing. You could see them like right before their run, they're doing the maneuvers. That's all part of like mental rehearsal. So he realized they all had these certain traits, especially from a mindset point of view. He said all of these Olympic gold medalists had the point of view of, I don't care if I have equipment failure, I have a bad day, I spill coffee on me, I'm still going to kick your ass. Like they all had this mindset. And again, we've seen the situations where things are going great for people, and then maybe, they lose their little lucky charm or something doesn't go right, and it's just complete mental collapse. And I actually saw it with that. I felt so bad for the gold medal. This kid was expected to win the gold medal in figure skating for the US.
Yeah, the quad god.
Yeah, the quad god. And he had some pressure like he had never experienced before. And I watched that gold medal. He was like, all he had to do is skate an average score, and the gold medal in the individual is his. Mm-hmm. And he had a total meltdown. And so, I remember thinking, I was like, wow, I'm really curious to see. I wonder who his, kind of mental performance coach was, because it's easy to kind of like just be so good. Because I've seen these guys in SEAL training. I've seen guys that were just naturally gifted athletes, fastest swimmer in the class, fastest runner in the class, first to quit because they just did not have it up here. They had never been challenged mentally before. And the beauty of this like performance psychology stuff is you can rehearse for these accidents and tragedies kind of beforehand. I give the example in Puddle Jumpers about Phelps. I think it was the 200 final butterfly in the Beijing Olympics where his goggles flooded out, right? Imagine you're at an Olympic final, you jump in the pool and your freaking goggles flood. But he had like rehearsed this all over. And that's the mindset. Like, I don't care if my goggles fall off, I'm still going to beat everybody. And he did, because he had rehearsed for this contingency already.
So how did you train your kids on these things, on these models, the self-talk, the mental rehearsal?
Yeah, the first time it came up was Jackson was in first grade when we were living in San Diego, and he was very nervous to present in class. He had this presentation. And look, you and I both know, we've done the podcast stuff. A lot of people I think it's the top 3 fear of adults is public speaking. And I've made sure all my kids, like, you're going to get public speaking training, like as a teenager or younger, because it's so valuable as an adult. Anyway, I worked with him on mental rehearsal. I said, Jackson, just let's talk about this. Okay, what's the classroom look like? Okay, imagine yourself in the class. Imagine yourself going up in front of the students. How you would feel nervous. Just put yourself in that situation and give your speech, and then do it over and over again and visualize that. And before you go to bed, visualize it again. And trust me, when you have to do it for real, you'll have already kind of got through the nerves, and it'll come more naturally to you. I still do this, and I do a lot of public speaking, and I recognize that the little bit of nervousness we feel, it's like, it's a good nervous energy, and it's that kind of energy that pushes you to perform if you harness it correctly. Not only did he become a champion in Oregon, I mentioned this in the book, because I feel like a lot of parents let their kids quit. And I'm not saying like they let them quit activities. And for instance, the example I give is my kids wanted to learn how to ski. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get you lessons and we're going to do this. They're young, but about halfway through the lesson, they all start complaining and like, it's too cold. It's my feet hurt and all this stuff. It's like, look, guys, you're going to get through this. And at the end, you can decide if it's not for you, that's good. But you started this, you wanted to start this. So let's get to the end. And then you can decide if it's not for you. And I feel like the parents that kind of just let the kids give up, they are missing that kind of what comes on the end. And typically, which would happen with my kids, they're like, all of a sudden, it became really fun. And they're like, oh, this is great now. It was worth the suffering. And I think not enough parents do that. And back to Jackson's case, he wanted to do speech and debate. I paid for camp. He went to Stanford debate camp as a sophomore, I think. But this is a kid that started debating as a freshman in high school. For 2 years, from freshman to sophomore, he got crushed. Him and his debate partner lost everything. They never won a tournament. And he just grinded for 2 years. And the junior year, he started winning everything. And that was when he got recognized as a academic All-American for his speech and debate performance. Also, I think it's hugely important as parents to teach your kids at a young age to develop defenses against outside negativity, because we can't be there all the time, right? Eventually, your kids go to school, they get coached, they go to sleepovers, they deal with parents that say maybe they're well-meaning, but they say terrible things to really make an impact. So having a conversation with my kids early about, look, you're going to have adults that will say certain things, and it may be really negative, but you have to realize that that's just life and it doesn't define you. And then if you're getting stuck on something and that little voice creeps in, teaching them how to deal with it and kind of defend against that. And that's super valuable, because and even I'm not perfect. My youngest, Tyler, had a really bad soccer coach. He loves soccer, was a best player on the team. And he had a really crappy coach one year. And I wasn't around that during that time. And I remember Gretchen calling me his mom and saying, look, this coach is just such a jerk. And he says these things to these kids and it ruined soccer for him. He stopped playing and he moved to basketball. But it just shows you how, our kids are impacted by these kind of things, and what people say is so important. But teaching them how to defend against that is huge.
Do you have any mantras that you repeat with your children? So, for example, in our home, we talk about we finish what we start. We fix things. Every day on the way to school, I ask the kids, are you going to have a good day or a great day? Those are the two choices they get.
The one thing I talk about in the book also is the importance of goal setting, even at a young age. And when I was writing the book, I was finishing it and I was searching. I was like, I know I got these goals somewhere. And I found them in my iNotes. I found their goals from 2018 and put them in the book, and then had them read it on the audio. But it was so fascinating to look back to 2018, and on your mantra question, they had a vision statement. So that was kind of a personal mantra, right? This is the kind of person I want to be. Then, I had them break out their goals for personal goals, family, and school. And I think that getting them in the habit at a young age, because look, life doesn't go as planned, but I feel like it's I grew up sailing, so I'll use a sailing analogy. If you set sail, you untie the boat, hey, the weather's going to get rough, the wind's going to change, but as long as directionally, this is where I want to be, that's a good thing. You have some control and the destination that you want to arrive at. I can't tell you how many adults I meet with just no plan. They're just just kind of winging it. I don't know. But to each their own, but I'm okay, that's not how I want to be. And I feel like most of the people that I know that have been successful in life have really good habits around goal setting. So I started that at a super young age. Every Christmas, we'd sit down and I try to make it fun. We go out for a fancy dinner. Okay, guys, let's do our goals. And they would write them down and like ask me for help. And then, okay, what do you got? Oh, that looks good. Or you need some help here, and would help them out. But we did that from a super young age. And now it's paid off for sure. Like they're all very goal oriented. And the mentorship too, like when the kids are getting out of high school, I think finding a mentor is huge, because inevitably you still have to reckon with that. Sometimes they just don't want to listen to dad, right? Like, what does this guy know? But
Yeah.
getting a mentor for them has been huge. I have mentors for all of them, and they've said like, wow, man, dad, you were right. Rusty is Jackson's mentor, one of my good friends who bootstrapped a $1 billion software company called MarketScan, which all the auto industry used to manage trade-in value for automobiles. But Rusty's like his mentor, because he's got a software company, and he's like, man, he's like, you're right again. I'm like, yeah, but at least you have somebody that can validate it, because he doesn't want to listen to me at sometimes. But the mentors are really good for kind of the young adults. I would say it's been a great thing for us.
What are some of the small everyday challenges that you introduce to your kids to help them build their resilience?
I wouldn't call it everyday challenges. The things that I was very intentional with was having conversations with them about, outside negativity in the world, and how it's up to them to control that. Giving them some pointers here and there. I gave them books to read. Like I remember when they start wanting things, right? Like a cell phone, a video game, a gift card. It was always, I always had kind of they had to earn it. And earning it could be just a reading assignment with a book report. But I had a really good reading list. They all read With Winning in Mind, which is my friend Lanny Basham's book. That's a great one. It's very easy to read. How to win friends and influence people. That was on their like middle school reading list. But just being intentional with having these conversations, the reading list, exposing them to travel, exposing them to adversity. I was really intentional with that stuff. When my son was worried about getting bullied in high school, getting him into jujitsu, like the whole family into jujitsu, which was a huge confidence booster for him. Because he had a couple run-ins with, like in high school, and he was just confident. He's like, yeah, because I remember he was wearing one of my my sweatshirts, my SEAL Team 3 shirts. And one of the like kind of known bully came up to him, started giving him a hard time. And he just like held his ground, and the guy just backed down totally. But he wouldn't have had that without the confidence of I think martial arts, whatever discipline it is super. If you get a good program, it does so much for the confidence. Because I remembered, I had a weird academic history, but I was a freshman at Ventura High School, and that was a huge high school. We had, a ton of like gang members from Ventura Avenue. It was kind of a scary place as a freshman. But I remember this kid, Ryan, who had a black belt, and everyone knew Ryan had a black belt, and nobody messed with this guy. Like he just was like, he was just like confident, and he didn't get in any fights because no one wanted to get their ass kicked by this Ryan kid. This is a black belt. And I was like, that stuck with me. I was like, okay, I want this for my kids. Like, oh, they do jujitsu. I remember walking into practice one day, and Madison was choking out a 15-year-old. She was 12. She had this 15-year-old boy who she was choking out with her gi, and he was like tapping her out. I was like, okay, that's good. That's what I'm talking about.
What are the things that you wanted to equip your kids with, and you felt very comfortable as a father just launching them in the world?
As a father, I was intentional about, okay, I want to make sure they're well-traveled, that they experience and see hardship, because it will show them that they have it pretty good. I want to build confidence. That was the martial arts stuff. They did Taekwondo and then we got them into jiu-jitsu. I want them to realize that, that they can control what's inside their head, and that, the world, people will say, they might mean well, but they're just going to say bad things, and it could affect you, and you have to learn how to deal with that. Like, that was a big part of my parenting, I'm a voracious reader, I think, because I grew up with no television on a sailboat for many years. So my kids were, I remember, like, look, if you're bored at dinner, take a book with you, like, no cell phone, but you can read a book. And I remember, like, I remember my friends one day, they're like, oh my God, like, your 3 kids are at dinner and I'm with friends, and they're just like, all have the books out, just quiet. Like, this is great. Like, yeah. But that was a big thing, like, getting them to read, like, good books, develop good habits. That was, I was just trying to be intentional about that. And there were things like I said, I didn't get right when I started writing this book. I asked my kids a series of questions. One of them was, if there's one thing that you wished I had have done differently, what would it be? And I remember being kind of shocked when Madison says, look, you were like our hero. I looked up to you. You were this Navy SEAL. You're a great skier. Like, you're this, like, hero, but I really wish you had talked more about the times you struggled and failed, because there was a time, I think, in high school too, where they put all this pressure on themselves to get good grades and get into a good school. She's like, I just didn't realize that it was okay to fail. Like, I just thought failure is not an option. And I'm like, no, failure is, like, good. It's a good learning thing. But I was shocked that she said that. And I'm like, oh man, I missed that one.
A lot of successful people, because they're successful, they failed a lot. They just move past it, and they don't spend a lot of time dwelling on.
But I think it's
failures.
As parents, it's important.
I agree
to share those stories, right? Because then they're like, wow, and again, like, I think you're kind of the hero of your children until they get to adults, and eventually they realize, oh, this guy's, like, as flawed as the rest of them, right? But it's still a good guy. But yeah, I wish I had shared more about my missteps, and I had plenty, plenty of content there.
Of course. What I love about your book is it's very practical, and my favorite part of the book is at the end. So I think the content in the first 8-9 chapters it's incredible, but you've a list of tools that your kids should have, or have a sense for how to use, books that they should be reading, movies that you can watch together. Those are phenomenal, and a goal setting template, which is amazing.
Also, the question, like, parents don't ask, I mean, people in general do not ask great questions. And I really practice on becoming a great question asker. And that's like asking your kids how their day went. You're just going to get a bullshit answer, right? But it's like, hey, what was the most interesting thing that happened to you today, or one of your friends? You're going to get some crazy answers. And then you're in a conversation. So that's important too. And I put some conversation starters at the back of the book as well.
Yeah. A couple of chapters that really stood out to me, because I'm thinking about this not only in my day-to-day, but what a couple of years out might look like, is how to navigate children through social media so they don't become consumed by it. So, I've got the 7 and 10-year-olds. We talk about social media at home, but how did you effectively navigate your kids through social media? Because we know how damaging it was for many kids who are the ages of your children.
Yeah, I think their mom and I's approach was to try and keep them off social media as long as possible. Then, other than having a conversation about what's on the internet and social media and the dangers and the risks, but my whole philosophy was like, raise kids that become good decision makers. Because I remember my guys, I have 2 boys and a girl, and my daughter's beautiful, and my friends would give me a hard time, like, oh, you're gonna, aren't you worried? All the attention of the boys. And I was like, actually, I'm not worried. Like, she's going to make good decisions. Like, I'm not worried at all. And that proved out to be the case. And so I think that the goal is to raise, confident, happy kids that are equipped with the right tools to deal with the world, no matter if it's in the real world or on social media. And if you do that, they're going to make good decisions. But you definitely got to talk about, the risks and the downfalls. And, Jackson, he got rid of his social media, I think, when he was a sophomore. He's like deleted everything, 16, and never had it, hasn't had it since. And then I look at the way, my other two interact with social, and they're not that invested in it, which is, I think, a good thing. But yeah, that was it. That was kind of our philosophy. Just make sure you raise good decision makers, and then they're gonna hopefully make good decisions. And that I think is not only on social media, but whether they're dating or off on their own doing things. That's what we always try to focus on. It's just, I want to make, like, because it's out of our control, especially in high school. So much out of our control at that point.
One of the last chapters is called Talking About Sex, Drugs, and Alcohol. And I would add gun violence. Because in Minneapolis, at the beginning of the school year, we had a shooting at a Catholic school. My kids didn't know about it. We didn't talk about it because I didn't want them to be scared. But I don't know, as a parent, I don't know when it's appropriate to start having these conversations. We've definitely talked about sex, drugs, and alcohol.
That's a tough one. I bought them all a custom. I was running a subscription box business for men at the time, and I was putting like really cool stuff in the boxes. One of them was a bulletproof insert that goes in that laptop sliding pocket that you have in briefcases and backpacks. And, with the bulletproof insert and books or a laptop, it'll stop an assault rifle round. I just know that from being a sniper and studying ballistics. I gave them all the inserts, and I said, look, just put this in your pack and forget about it. But no, if you need it, you've got a shield. You can like shield yourself. And had a conversation. It was, I would remember thinking to myself, and I actually got into it with the NRA. The president of the NRA like took me on, like it was a whole nother side story. But I was like, look, we have to do something. Like, we have to be more responsible. Like, I don't want to be a parent having this, how terrible it is that I have to have this conversation with my kids who are in, middle school. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, there has to be a better way. But yeah, we had that conversation for sure. And I did talk about, I think, the inserts in Puddle Jumpers too, but that was a tough one.
And that was middle school you started those conversations?
It was just like, this is happening with such frequency that we need to have the conversation.
Yeah. I just don't want them to be afraid.
Yeah.
And have anxiety about it.
Yeah. And so, there's things I put in the back of the book too, like little tips on how to keep your kids a little safer. That insert is in there for sure, the bulletproof insert. The other thing I give all my kids, especially the women in the family, is a high power flashlight. It's a 1,000 lumen Surefire. It's like, put it in your pocket, your backpack. But that you shine that light in someone's face in the daylight, and they're going to be flash blind somebody in the daylight. And it's the best tool because you can carry it anywhere.
You got divorced, and I'm curious to know, how did that affect your children? And then how did you and your ex-wife successfully continue to raise your kids?
The thing that Gretchen and I did was we committed to put the kids first, and we committed to always be on the same page. Like, they weren't going to divide and conquer us. We committed to talking positively about each other inside our own family circles. Because in the beginning, both sets of families take sides. They're going to trash talk your former partner. And we put an end to that. We was like, look, I don't want to hear you talking negatively about my ex ever, especially around the kids. And eventually, both sides of the family, we set an example for them, and they started to like talk to one another again. I ended up getting invited because they had a huge guest house on the ranch. So like, anytime you come up, stay at the guest house. So it flipped everything. And then it became this like positive environment where I was cooking. I cooked Thanksgiving dinner 2 years for my ex, her husband, my kids, their two daughters. It was just like, but people were like, how is this possible? I'm like, guys, you just have to put the kids first, but it takes two people to cooperate. And sometimes I get you have one person that isn't going to cooperate. And I had this conversation with so many of my friends who divorced. And I was like, look, your job is just to be always take the high road, always talk positive. Don't say anything bad about your ex. And eventually the kids will catch on. When they get older, they're smart enough to figure it out. Because now my kids reflect back and they get it.
What's one habit or mindset that you want a parent to take away from this conversation or from Puddle Jumpers?
Parents, I think we get so caught up in the day to day. We're like, no, I'll just do this for them because it's faster. But no, let them go to the cashier by themselves and check out something or walk to the bus stop. These ordinary things build confidence over time. So, really focus on that. If you screw up, just own it as a parent. You don't have to, be this perfect person. I think they want somebody who's going to lead by example, but also we screw up as leaders sometimes as parents, and just to be like, own it. The kids will respect you more for that. And then just be intentional in your parenting and realize that it does take time. I feel like, so many parents, they focus so much time on their careers and they forget that, if they want a peaceful, enjoyable life with their adult children. And we still go on holiday together. They come visit. I talk about, creating that environment when your kids are adults. It's amazing. And my kids are some of my closest friends. And that's a beautiful thing as a parent to have adult kids like that. But you don't get that by not being involved in their life. So you have to put in the time for sure.
Brandon, what's a forever family?
I'd say a forever family is a family that wants to be together and hang out together. And that's what I have right now. Like, I'm taking my daughter and her best friend to Amsterdam a few weeks from now. Just like, hey, look, I'll buy your train tickets. Let's go there and have a fun weekend. Because I know she got her bestie and her roommate in London. And she's like, that sounds amazing, Dad. Like, let's do it. And to have a 21-year-old that's excited to hang out with you. And yesterday I took my Jackson. We went flying over the coast in Portugal. And I called him. I was like, hey, what are you doing today? He's like, you want to go fly? He's like, yeah, that's amazing. Let's do it. And we hung out half the day like that. That's a forever family.
Brandon, phenomenal conversation. Thank you for your time and thank you for being a genius.